So today it's NYTimes cooking Salisbury steak, making a double batch. So that'll be good. I changed from pizza and steaks, sirloins. I just felt like some kjøttkaker in Norwegian, but it's beef patty in mushroom and onion sauce, and typically a microwave dish, or in old people's homes, nursing homes, or in a diner maybe. But we'll see how this goes. So I've got lots of mushies. I've got oyster mushrooms, and I have aroma sop, which are just brown regular mushrooms. And then as a side, I've got some broccolini, because that's what NYTimes had. And I've got 800 grams of Angus meat mince. I've got 2 yellow onions. I don't have brown sugar or dark brown sugar, but I've got dark muscovado sugar, cane sugar, close enough. And then I'm doing it all in this pot. Then I've got beef stock in a little thing like this. I've got 4 of them. I don't need that much. It's basically roux, beef stock, milk, yellow onion, mushrooms. It's the sauce. Pretty simple. I'm a little low on salt. Totally borderline out of salt. And then you can see I'm getting ready for the trip, so I have some liqueurs. Then the kitchen counter is a total mess. I've been baking pizzas and making sushi. I haven't cleaned that off yet. I can leave the flour there because I'll be making some more pizzas, and I found some good pizza bottoms all the way from Italy, handmade. So that should be better than the one that stuck last time to the pizza stones. And they're my pizza stones from the garden. They still smoke a bit. I can't get all the burn bits off completely. But I mean, I bake that on that, and then that substitutes a pizza stone. And it gets really hot, and it covers almost the entire oven. So anyway, I guess I get to start. And it also gets ketchup and Worcestershire sauce. And I think that's pretty much it. And grated onion and panko crumbs. I actually found panko crumbs in my local grocery store, which is very surprising. But I guess some people make fried Japanese dishes. So that was very cool to find that. I didn't think I'd find that. Otherwise you could use regular bread soaked in milk. So time to start adding ingredients and make the patties and then fry them up. So because I'm doubling up the recipe, 3 tablespoons of ketchup becomes 6, and I'm using Heinz. Stick to the tried and true. So 6 tablespoons of ketchup. It's 1, 2, 3, ketchup effect, 4, 5, make it a good 7, just for extra flavor. And then, oops, put that away. And 6 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, it goes back in. And then we have 2 eggs. 1 egg for the original recipe, 2 eggs for the and I'll put on some latex gloves to mix it all together. But just check the recipe again. 2 eggs. This is the bin. It's 2 eggs. Two teaspoons of sugar. So this is what we have. Muscovy, dark Muscovy sugar. There's 2 heaping teaspoons, probably more than I need, but anyway, 2 teaspoons of sugar. Put that away. And then we have a cup of panko crumbs. So there they are. The cup is about, I'm pretty sure, could be wrong, and I'm pretty sure a cup is about 250 mils. So I'm just gonna guess that I'm right. So, oh, here we have pints, US fluid ounces. How many ounces to a cup? 8 ounces, right? Or is it 4? No. It's got to be 8 ounces for a cup. How many ounces in a cup? I have to look up. Alright. Give it a break while I look this up. Yeah, so it's right. So a cup is about a little less than 8 ounces actually. But, well, no, it's 8 ounces is a cup. So 236 milliliters. About 8 ounces. So that's half the packet. Roughly, a little more. So that's done. That's most of the bag. And then mix this all together. So it looks like this sloppy mess, which is fine. And then we need to grate half an onion. Maybe a little more. For that we're using just a grater. You could chop it finely, I guess. I mean, if I say grate, so I mean we'll try and grate it. take the bigger half, and then the rest gets sliced up for the sauce. So we'll see. So this has been no recycling of organics here. So and I'm not sure exactly how much 2 pounds is, but it's 2.2 pounds to the kilo, and I've got 800 grams, so that should be pretty close. I'm just going to chop the rest up. That's a bit of it. I'll just chop this up. Try and follow the recipe. I don't think it matters that much. I mean, you can probably eyeball it. Ah, old onions, making me cry. Anyway, goes in the bowl. Few little bigger bits there, but that's okay. Right. So salt and pepper. I have no salt. I'm borderline out of salt. Out of salt. So I've got pepper though, plenty of it. So my favorite pepper grinder. Lots and lots of pepper. There's Worcestershire sauce and ketchup. I think that's enough salt in there. Give that quite a few grinds. And then when I mix it all up, if I can fit it all in there, all the mince, which is 14% fat mince, Angus beef. Alright, that'll do. Alright, I have to read the instructions again. Alright, well it says just add the beef mince and the panko. So I mean that's pretty simple. And then rather than use a fork or a spoon, I'll just put on some latex gloves. Makes it a bit easier. So I'm get a few onion bits. Whoops, don't want the onion skin. So I always have latex gloves in the kitchen. Whoops. These are vinyl gloves, not as good as latex gloves, which are much better, but they were out at the local chemist. Pharmacy. Chemist in England, pharmacy in the US. I'm not sure CVS has these. Maybe. I have pretty much everything else, including COVID shots. So I think I'll add the beef first and try and incorporate the liquid. And this goes out on the 12th. It's now already though, so I mean it lasts quite a while. So I'm not sure if this is a pound. It goes into recycling, plastic. And just dump that in there. And then we get to stir away. Whoa, alright. There's some panko spillage there. Whoops. Need a bigger pot and a bigger bowl. Now, I'm not sure why they call it for panko, but I mean, New York Times recipes are usually pretty good. So I mean, I follow this one to the letter because they've tested it, so it should work. And I get to fry them up and then make the sauce, and then put them in the sauce. Looks alright. Should be able to make some nice patties. It says 8 patties in the recipe per pound of meat, which makes some very small patties. So I'm gonna make bigger patties and fry them up. Just in olive oil. So how I'm going to do this without getting mince mixture all over the kitchen is a good question. But it's spreading bacteria all over everything. I think that's pretty good. I think that's there. I guess I will do, since I'm shooting it on video, I'll make nice little perfect patties with a ring, which means digging out a baking tray, and well, I've just been these. Digging out a baking tray and using a ring and patting it down and making nice little perfect patties. But since it's on video, I may as well take the extra effort. And then my rings are really rusted. These have been with me for a long time, and then everything in the professional kitchen gets tape so that you know it's yours, it's color coded. Same with my knives, they've still got tape on them, most of them. And then these are not washed in the machine. Your knives aren't, because that makes them blunt. This one has no tape on it. I've removed the tape on quite a few of them, I think. But a few of them still have tape. Because you don't share knives in a professional kitchen. So the question is, how big do we make them? And I think this one here looks like a good sized patty, and I'll probably get around 8 or 10 of them. I mean, I might make it to the top, I might make them pretty fat and fill them completely. So I'll just dig out a baking tray and put some baking paper on it, I guess, and then make my patties, and then I get to fry them all. And then my only frying pan, which is big enough, is lost the non-stick coating. But that's too bad. I just have to add lots of extra olive oil. So I'll show you what I'm going to fry them up in. This is an oldie. So I'll fry them up in this. Then the onion, the mushrooms, and then I'll throw it all in the pot to simmer, because I'm just gonna there's so much smoke if I try and cook them through that I'll set off the fire alarm. Anyway, so now we get to make the patties, and I'm gonna whack on some more gloves. So I could just wash my hands, but this is I'm gonna freeze them down in the freezer and have some more outside on the balcony where it's cold. I don't want any bacteria from my fingernails or my hands getting on them and growing, because they'll be out there for a while, maybe a week, maybe 5 days, who knows. So anyway, easier solution to getting baking trays, just get some baking paper. And then make these little burger pucks. I mean, they could almost be little sliders. I may need a, oops, I'm gonna do this. They could almost be little sliders. Make a nice little slider there. And I like the spice combination. It smells good. It really does. And then just run a knife around it because it's kind of sticky. And pat it down. And then I'm not gonna, oops, cook these all the way through. I'm going to brown them and I finish cooking the sauce, which is another operation. That's too much. Oops. Not trying to do this restaurant level or anything. It's just going to be close enough, good enough for homemade. It helps a lot to always buy, I mean, it's a good idea to buy these rings. This makes a whole lot of things a lot easier if you want to do something a little bit fancy or make it nice. So that's a little bit under, give it a little more to the top. They're not totally perfect, but I'm not working in a restaurant anymore, so I mean, I don't have to make it perfect. It just has to be good enough. I'm only cooking for myself. So 8 of these per half pound. It's not very much. They would have been very small, shitcocked, very small burger pucks if you were following the New York Times recipe. So mine are quite a bit bigger. I'll probably get about 8 in total, 2 pounds of meat. But I can only fit 4 in the pan at one time. It'll be less than that. It'll be 7, I think. So, I mean, searing these on both sides just for a few minutes per side, there's no way they're going to be cooked through. But, I mean, that's okay. And then this is going to be a fatter one because I have to use up the rest of the meat. So, whoops, yeah, that's the fatter one. That's alright, use it up. Oops. So I got 7 when I should have had 16 according to the recipe, but mine are a lot fatter. So that goes in the washing up. And it's a fatter one. And then I can use the gloves. And according to the recipe, these are just cooked in olive oil. So turn on the fan and there will be a bit of smoke. And I'll put it on 8. And then just move this over so you can see. Adjust a little bit. My body will be blocking most of this, which has been a problem with the last few cooking videos. But we'll see how we go. So I don't normally wait for the pan to heat up. A little low in olive oil. Just throw the olive oil in there and wait till it gets hot. I'm going to be generous with the olive oil because this pan, the non-stick coating, is more or less dead. So then I just get to wait and then get a spatula. And then I guess I'll just put those on a plate when I'm done. And then we can start on the sauce. And then I don't have to clean the chopping board because I've got this paper underneath. But it's going to quicken the sauce anyway, so I mean, as far as mixing raw and cooked food, etc., it's all raw now, it's all going to be cooked, so it wouldn't be a problem. And the sauce is basically just a roux, butter and flour, and beef stock and milk, and salt and pepper. And I don't have any salt, but and then for added spiciness, optional, you can add the same thing that went in the patties: Worcestershire sauce, which is salt, ketchup, which is salt and sweet, and sugar for sweetness. And lots of mushies. So then I got to chop up all the mushies, and I got to chop up, well, 1.5 onions. But I'll probably not cook these in the sauce too long, and they may not be fully cooked through, because I mean, if I try and cook them right through, they'll fall apart, even though there's egg in there. So they'll be probably medium rare or something when I take it off and put it on the balcony to cool down. And then I put it in takeaway containers, as I can show you one. Put it in takeaway containers like this, which are from bacalhau, which is a Norwegian Portuguese dish. I can probably fit 2. That's enough for a dinner, is 2 of these big boys with mashed potato and sauce. That's dinner. So I'll get 2 in the freezer, and then I've got 1 extra because I didn't quite get 8 patties out of it. I'm not sure what to do about that. And then I have to make the mash, which is a whole operation. I can use instant mash, which is frozen potatoes and butter cubes, which you just add hot milk to, or I can make it from scratch, and I'm not sure. After all this cooking, I'm up for that, but I should do it because it tastes a whole lot better. So maybe I'll make the mash with the mouli and everything from scratch, which means peeling potatoes, boiling them, mashing them, passing them to the mouli, adding hot milk and butter. And then I'll do the whole bag of potatoes because it's such a job to do them that you may as well make a big batch and then reheat later. Just reheat with some hot milk, you know. And I've actually got the fire alarm turned off because I suspect there will be quite a bit of smoke from this operation, so I don't want the fire alarm going. So it looks like it's getting hot. I can fit 4 in there. So you can see by the thickness, even by the time I've browned them and flipped them, they're not going to be cooked through. So they need to sit in the sauce and cook for a bit. Anyway. While they're frying on one side, you can see those are not going to get cooked through unless it goes in the oven or in a sauce. They're too fat. Interesting fact, this comes from Salisbury Steak, was a doctor in, I forget where, Mississippi or Georgia or somewhere. But this was recommended as a health food. Lots of meat diet, protein diet for good health back in about 1880, or I'm not sure, you have to Wikipedia it. But he recommended cubes of steak, barely held together and then fried with just some simple garnish. I forget what he had as garnish: parsley, some melted butter, and some onion and some things, but nothing like his no sauce, in other words. Whereas it originated from the Hamburg steak in New York City, where the immigrants from Hamburg in Germany would come over, and they wanted something like home, which at home they call it frikadellen, which Schöttköche, which they still have in Germany. Basically meatballs. And those were served seared but raw in the middle, with brown sauce. Basically, it's like a fondue or something. Just a brown brown beef sauce. Okay, I think we can flip these over. Whoops, that's a little too much. So, oh well, I burned the top. So let's turn that down a bit. Anyway, that's caramelized. But anyway, so they made these for the immigrants in New York City who came over on the boat from Hamburg. And then eventually they put it between two slices of bread, and it became the hamburger. But they still serve this in Germany, Hamburg, and of course hamburgers all over the world now. And then in Norway and Denmark and Sweden, we have variations. There are variations all over the world, in Philippines, Thailand, etc., with minced beef patties, fried, or steamed, or in curry, or in God knows what have you. In Norway, we call them kjøttkaker, or kjøttburgere, or kjøttboller, which are small round ones, which you know from IKEA. Which in IKEA you have Swedish meatballs, which are smaller ones, and basically a very similar sauce to this, which is beef stock and milk or cream thickened, kind of a light brown sauce. That's the IKEA version of Swedish meatballs, but they're smaller, of course, and they're round. And then you have, of course, spaghetti with meatballs, which is a US thing. No, it's totally global, definitely. And then they're a little burned on the top here, so I'll cook them a bit less on the other side. But the egg is helping to keep them together, but these can't cook very long in the sauce or they'll fall apart. So I may not even cook them in the sauce. I may just freeze them half cooked, add the sauce on top, and then in the microwave to reheat. And then what I'll do is when I get the next batch in, which is over here, those last three, I'll start chopping up the onions and the mushrooms and fry them in the same pan. And then deglaze the pan with some beef stock and throw it in the pot and make my sauce from there. So I think that's about done. So just as well I turn the fire alarm off because it's really smoking. Ooh, ha ha ha. So I get rid of so I gotta keep an eye on that. Now it's time to do the mushrooms while those are cooking. I'll turn that down a bit. Slow it down a bit so it doesn't burn quite as much. And then you can see, well, a little burned. It's not quite brown, but it's fine on this side. On the other side got a bit burned. That's alright. So I think, what do I want to do with these onions? Chop them into little bits, but I think I kind of want slices. So I'm just going to chop these in half. Peel, of course. Peel these bad boys. And then I get to cut up all the mushrooms. Should be able to turn a mushroom with your chef's knife, like a big one. That's what my old teacher used to say. Carving mushrooms. That's kind of old school. So I think these are probably, ow, that's brown enough. Get these mushrooms chopped quickly before and I want them to stay in slices, so I'll do it this way as opposed to this way. I mean, it doesn't matter. Maybe I'll do it this way. I get half rings then. Cutting them a little thick. See if I can't caramelize them. Alright, that's those done. Then I've got a whole stack of mushrooms to fry. I may do those in the pot and transfer everything to the pot because I don't think that pan is big enough for that many mushrooms. We'll see. That's browned. So only 7 fricadelle, but really only need 2 of these for a dinner. And these are totally raw on the inside. So, turn you around again. Have the mushrooms frying. And then these oyster mushrooms, I think I want to keep them whole. Just throw them in there as they are. So there you go. They were out of paper bags for mushrooms. So that goes in next to brown oyster mushrooms. I've got probably more than I need. And then I get to chop up Aruma soup. I'm not sure what they're called in English. I had shiitakes and I had some other ones. I'll just cut them in quarters, like my sauce chunky. This is going to be home style primitive cooking, like grandmother cooking. Don't want anything finely chopped or anything like that. So for this, I may as well zoom out. So for this, I'm just chopping in quarters. And I'm not going to bother, if I was in a nice restaurant, might do that, the little brown bits in the bottom. I couldn't be bothered. So little ones going 2, big ones going 4. So they're roughly the same size. This is 4. This is 7. 4. They shrink a lot, of course, as well. And I've all these go in 4, apart from the baby ones. Baby one. And then because that beef stock doesn't have a lot of taste, I want to get as much caramelization on both the mushrooms and the onions as possible. So those onions want to be brown, really brown, and I'll transfer the mushrooms from there to the pot. I still have to fry up all these guys, and I'm going to make extra sauce. Oops, put that there. Extra sauce, a whole lot of sauce. So I'll quadruple the amount of sauce that the recipe calls for, which was, I forget, a cup of milk and a cup of beef stock. Can't remember exactly. So this is not a low-fat dish either. There's a lot of olive oil, and there's no butter in the recipe, but I'm going to put butter in there to make a proper roux, and to keep it from sticking on that awful pan. And to fry this as opposed to boiling the mushrooms. Called for cremini mushrooms. I'm not sure what those are. I forget, because I haven't lived in the US for 30 years. But I mean, you can use any kind of mushroom, basically. And then if I've got extra sauce, I'll just freeze it down in the container, and that makes a good, nice sauce for a steak. There's an onion that got away from me. So those are browning pretty well. Get them nice and brown and get some flavor in there. Alright, I can turn you off and take a little break. Well, this is going out to my mother too, so I can't sit there drinking beer. Well, they're getting there, but I want these nice and caramelized. And there's plenty of oil there. I'll just add some oil and butter after this, these go in the pot, the mushrooms, but I want them brown. So those cook a little longer. And then I've got all these, then all these guys. I'm not sure how the autofocus is working on this thing. It's time to upgrade the camera to the new S5 2X, whatever it is, when it comes out in May. The S5 II is already out. Much better autofocus and 6K. Don't need 6K, I've only got a 4K TV, a 4K monitor. But it's got a built-in fan and is much better. But I'll lose 15,000 kroners selling my old one, or 10,000 kroners I'll lose. So I'm not sure I'm going to upgrade. This one seems to be working fine. Good little camera, great. So those are more or less caramelized. Not quite totally brown, but I mean good enough. There they are. So I'll add some butter. Get that little onion bit out so it doesn't burn. Add some butter and add the mushrooms. Just regular salted butter. This is not a low-fat dish, so not good for my cholesterol, but that's really too bad. And then we're making roux, right? So you need a bit of butter, equal parts butter and equal parts flour. Turn that up a bit so we don't. Turn the fire alarm off because, well, it doesn't look like it, but I mean there will be some smoke very likely when I turn this up. So not a low fat dish. Just wait till that melts and then throw all these mushies in. Now I've got to do that twice, and then add the flour and then the stock. So the original recipe calls, that's for a pound of beef. For the sauce it calls for 1 cup of beef stock and half a cup of milk. So that makes 2 cups of stock because I'm doubling it, and 1 cup of milk. So 500 mils of, a little shy of 500 mils of stock and 250 mils of milk. But I've got a lot of mushrooms and a lot of onions here, so I may need that much liquid. And then I'm just going to reduce that until it thickens. I'm going to add some pepper here. I have no salt. I'm out of salt. It's pretty bad. Not running to the shops now though. So there will be an extra takeaway or two of extra sauce, and then I get 2 dinners. I mean 2 patties, pucks, burger pucks is a dinner. So I get 2 dinners in the freezer, 2 extra sauces, and then 1 big dinner with all of 3 burger pucks. So I'm very curious. It smells good. I mean, it's just meatballs, basically, in a bigger format, like a burger, with light brown sauce and mushrooms. And then the question is if I could be bothered to make if I could be bothered to make mash from scratch, which I should do. But the only problem with mash is peeling potatoes, and they're small potatoes, such a pain in the butt. And I've got instant mash in the freezer. But maybe I'll do that. I'll make a separate video on how I make mash. Although my latest mashes haven't been that good. Even though I've made hundreds and hundreds of kilos of mash in the restaurant, my latest mashes haven't been that great. But a homemade mash tastes so much better than the ones from the store that are in the freezer section. Even if you whip them up and add hot milk and butter, there's no comparison. So I might actually make a mash with a mouli. You've seen me do that before, but the last time was not a success. You need a mouli, or there are different ways to do it. You mash it with a masher, which is not great because you get lumps. That's the kind of coarse country style mash. Or you can do it in the mixer if you have a floor mixer and you're doing lots and lots for a catering something. Whip it in the mixer with hot milk and butter and beat the lumps out of the mash that way. But that's or another way is to put it through a meat grinder. You put the hot potatoes through a meat grinder and it grinds them into fine. That's like basically like a motorized mouli, and that works pretty well too. So I've seen that done. I've seen all of them done. And then the different ways you can make a mash. You can boil them with the skin on, and then you have 5 or 6 apprentices all standing in a row with 2 or 3 pairs of latex gloves, peeling them and putting them into the mouli, and then beating in hot milk and cubed butter. Or you can peel them, slice them into slices about that thick, boil them, drain them, let them steam off, dry out a bit, and then through the mouli and hot milk and butter. And another way to do it is melt the butter in the milk and have it boiling, although you're not sure about the exact amounts then. So this is while I turn the fire alarm off. So that's one way. So a lot of ways to do mash, but it all comes down to the potato. Is it mealy enough, or is it going to be too waxy? And Key or Bilton's, we use Desiree potatoes, which were actually a bit waxy. Or you can bake the potatoes and then peel them, and then they're really dry. Then you don't have to worry about the extra moisture. So bake them and then peel them and then put them through the mouli or the meat grinder or whatever it is, however you're doing it. So these can go in. So not a low fat recipe. So some more butter. Again, it all comes down to potatoes. I mean, I think a good mash would be baked Idaho potatoes here in the US. And then maybe russet potatoes, I'm not sure. So now the oyster mushrooms go in. Give it a grind of pepper. So now I need 500 mils of stock. And these are 250 mils, so 2 of these. And then I need 250 mils of milk. I've got whole milk here because I was going to make mash and I don't want to use 1% or 2% milk for mash. So 50 mil. It's a little over. Then what I'll do is I think I'll change it over to the mushies. I'll just add 2 tablespoons of butter to the pan and 2 tablespoons of flour, and then that goes back in the pot along with all the stock and the milk, and then some ketchup and Worcestershire sauce and sugar to make it savory, because we can. First time I've put ever ketchup in the sauce, but I mean I'm following the recipe, so this is optional. Then that's to cook down and reduce until it's about the right consistency, or the taste is right. Reduce it till it tastes good, keep tasting. I could actually quadruple it. I don't know if I want a liter of sauce though. Maybe I do. I think that's not going to be enough sauce, so I'll do a liter. So 460 mils of milk. And 4 beef stock. And 4 tablespoons of flour and 4 tablespoons of butter. So that means I need more butter. That beef stock isn't very strong, so that's to reduce quite a bit. And I'm going to eyeball it, but I mean this butter, this roux, I'm going to brown quite a bit, so I'll make some extra, because roux, as it browns, loses its thickening ability, but we want to give this a nice brown sauce, brun sauce, which is beef stock and brown roux. It's very old school. Very escoffier. Ideally you'd have veal jus, not veal jus, but you'd have demi-glace or something, or you'd have beef stock and reduce that down and thicken it with brown roux or arrowroot or something like that. So this is that's about 2 tablespoons. So I need well, it's not low fat. It's about 4 tablespoons. And 4 tablespoons of flour. If I have that much flour, I'm not sure. I probably have like 3, but we'll see. So this is typically what you get in an old person's home. Maybe not with oyster mushrooms and Anuma salt, but you definitely get Salisbury steak in the freezer section of your supermarket, or old person's home, or maybe a diner, because it's cheap. It's just minced beef, right? And some seasonings. So I'm going to turn that right down and pop these mushrooms in. I'll put my butter in. And then to give you a look at, well, there we go, if it'll focus. So that's melting, and then I just get to add the flour and then brown it with a wooden spoon, of course. So we'll see. So that's more or less melted, it's melting. Let's see, 4 tablespoons. Not very scientific tablespoons. 1, 2, 3, very heaping. That's really 2.5, but that's alright. This is gonna reduce in thickening power. I might actually add a 5th one. I think that was more than 4 tablespoons of butter. Alright. Let's see how that goes. Wooden spoon. Not allowed in commercial kitchens, but I mean, for the home, wooden spoon, gotta have a wooden spoon. My auntie doesn't like wooden spoons for some reason, which I think is crazy. So the rule is cold roux, hot liquid, or hot liquid and cold roux. But now I'm adding hot roux and cold liquid. I mean, I could have also just sprinkled the flour on the pot and mixed it in and then added the liquid, as opposed to making a roux, which you would do in, say, a beef bourguignon or some stew like that. But now I'm going to cook this slowly. I'm going to turn it up a bit until it gets a nut brown color. And then I have to hope it's enough to thicken it, otherwise I'll add some more roux. I'll make another roux. But I mean, this would be good now for a light brown velouté, or a light velouté or something, because it's pale. But we really want to get it kind of nut brown or dark brown for a beef sauce. And those beef stock things don't taste very much, so it has to be reduced quite a bit. But I'm also scraping off the bottom all the flavor that came from frying all the onions and the fricadelle, the Salisbury steaks, is in there too. And that's looking very thin. I'm going to add some more flour. I'm going to add the rest of it. That's too thin. That's not what a roux should look like. Alright. And that, of course, the more you cook it, the less the flour is going to thicken. So that was probably not 50-50, that was probably, I had probably like 8 tablespoons of butter, not 4. Anyway, okay, I think that's, I'm out of flour anyway, so no choice. But I'm going to let that brown a bit, I think, to get a nice brown sauce. I've turned up the heat a bit. If you can see there, if it'll focus, to 8 out of 10, because I'm a bit impatient. I want this to brown. This is very old school escoffier. So, just keep stirring. Then I'll throw that all in the pot, and then add my hot roux, cold liquid, right? Hot roux, cold beef stock, cold milk. That should really add a bit more flour in there, but then there's some odd black bits from where I burned the onions or the beef, but that needs to be darker. It should be chestnut color or even darker. It's getting there. So out of 2 pounds of beef I got 7. That could be smaller, so you could have 8. So you could have 4 dinners out of this, out of 2 pounds of beef, or 800 grams of minced beef. Needs more flour. I'm assuming that'll be enough. I'm gonna have to reduce this way down, and then I may even have to throw in, I'm not sure that's enough liquid to cover all the mushies and all the beef patties, some lamb stock, but I'm following the recipe pretty slavishly. So now it's medium brown. I want it a bit darker. I can smell it now, the flour cooking. You can see the burn bits here. That's not so good. Just coming up scrapings from the pan. But I got all that up anyway, so that's extra flavor. Caramelized onions and bits from beef, mostly bits of caramelized onion. I haven't made a dark roux like this in years and years and years. It's very old school. No one uses this anymore. I think it can go a little darker, but I think we're pretty close. And I don't want to burn it. It can go a bit darker. And then I'll turn it off. And then just throw in the pot. The pot is quite full with mushies and onions. So, not a low-fat dish. Very rich. It's going to be probably richer than I'm used to. See how the stomach goes. Now it's really turning chestnut brown, really darkening. You have to stir all the time now at this stage to make sure it doesn't burn. I think that's good enough. So I'll turn that off. Then throw it in the pot. Whoa, a lot of smoke, just as well I turned off the fire alarm. That's not cool. Too much smoke. And then might just deglaze that pan with some beef stock. So pan didn't stick after all. Goes in the sink. Give that a wipe. It's got grease all over it. So now, 4 of these guys, that's a liter. Beef stock. Not the greatest beef stock, but it sure beats making your own. So, zoom out a bit. And then half a liter of milk. So that's 4 times the New York Times recipe. But it has to reduce. Come to a boil, simmer, reduce. And then hopefully I've got the amount of roux right. I'm not sure. Otherwise I can thicken with some arrowroot or something. And then hopefully taste something. So we'll see. My cooking is a little rusty, so it's 20 years since I was in a proper kitchen. Did my time there though, 80 hours a week. Not cool. Talk about a bullshit job. Poorly paid. Slave labor. And the milk. Not sure how cool that is, pouring that in at the beginning. Maybe it should be at the end. But just trusting the New York Times there. So that's what it looks like. So we can turn that back on and bring it to a boil. And then hopefully it'll thicken. I've got on full blast. Pot goes back under the counter. Give it a little more pepper. And then it needs some ketchup and Worcestershire sauce and sugar. So let's add a good tablespoon of ketchup, well, a teaspoon of ketchup, but I've quadrupled that, so good couple squirts of ketchup. It's more or less like adding tomato paste. And then a good splash, a couple splashes of Worcestershire sauce. which is where the hell is that? Worcestershire sauce. There it is. I'm just really eyeballing it. Should really taste, but a good couple of splashes. That's about 4 tablespoons. And then some demerara sugar. So, wherever I put that, I'm not sure. Where did I put the sugar? Need the sugar. Well, there we go. 2 tablespoons should do it. 1, 2. Called for a pinch, but going big. Go big or go home. Smells good. Put the top on, bring it to a boil, and then let it simmer and reduce. And then, well, hey, that's going to make Salisbury steak. And then I guess the next mission, if I'm up for it, well, the next mission will be to make the mash. And then I've got, just like New York Times, got some broccolini. I need some greens, so they had broccolini. So I'm going to bring that to the boil and then reduce it. And I'm sending this to my mother and auntie, and maybe just 20 other people will watch it. So I'm not sure, but this is how I followed the New York Times recipe, which looked like a good recipe. So New York Times is good recipes, good place to go for recipes. So I'm just reducing the sauce. The manaroo was right, finally. Needs to reduce to intensify the flavor. My burger pucks are fine, they look good. They have to go in just simmering or turned off. I'll turn it off and then just let them sit in it and they'll cook finished. Ooh, num num. These are still raw in the middle. They'll finish cooking in the sauce even if I just turn it off and just leave it. And then I get to put them away in the freezer. So my freezer is full of good food. So I have 2 dinners, 2.5. I could do one with just 1 puck, I guess, 1 burger. And this is looking, this needs to reduce a bit more. Well, excuse me. It needs to reduce by about 1/3. And then I can, if I can fit these in, I should. I'll just about cover them. And then I've got dinner for 3 or 4 nights. I still have a steak in the fridge. Huge steak. About 1.5 pounds or a pound. And then I've got like 4 pizzas. Although the last pizza was an abortion. So just came stuck to the pizza peel. And then just burned all over the place inside the oven. So I'll let that reduce for, well, let's have a timer, 15 minutes. Give it a stir every 5 minutes. I might actually set that for 5. So it's very mild. I had too much sugar. New York Times recipe recommended 1 pinch of brown sugar for the sauce. I had 2, and I made 4 times the amount of sauce, but I put in 2 tablespoons. So instead of 4 pinches, I put in 2 heaping tablespoons. So sauce is a bit sweet, and it could maybe do with some vinegar, but I'm not going to put that in there. And obviously it could do some salt, but I'm totally out of salt, which is bad. I have to go buy some more. Well, there's a little bit there. It's a few grains of sea salt. But there's salt in the Worcestershire sauce anyway. Then I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Salisbury steak, if you're from the US. A Salisbury steak. You know, if you're posh from England, you'd say Salisbury steak. So, but I'm not posh from England. I'm from Chevy Chase, which is pretty posh. But so Salisbury steak it is. Salisbury steak, and it's a US recipe anyway, so it's from the US originally, even if it originally came from Hamburg. So anyway, cool. So I'll thinking and turn this off, because the only thing left is to put these in the sauce and then just let them sit, and that's not worth making a video of it. You just let them simmer and reduce it until it's fine, and then serve with mash or rice. I guess I could make rice instead of mash, or potato gratin, or I don't know, coleslaw. I have no idea what they serve it with in the US. I'm living in Norway, of course. So I'm going to turn this off and edit the video and put it online. But this is just reducing. That's not anything exciting to watch about. And then I think I will make the mash tonight, and that's going to be a separate video. But then I have to recharge the batteries on my camera and format the SD card, and that's a separate video. And then see if I make a decent mash. Although, if I can find it, dig. For the mash, I have a mully, and then I'm not looking forward to peeling the potatoes or putting the potatoes through this. This is a mini mully, but obviously in the restaurants we use a big one, which is 5 times the size, and you have a lot of apprentices to peel the potatoes, but it's the same principle. And this was very expensive. It's from France, food mill, Foley food mill, maybe from the US, but it's tinned anyway, which is a sign of a good mully. So a tin mully is your best friend for mash. So I would like a big one, but I don't make enough mash for one person that it's really worth buying, and there are thousands of kroners or hundreds and hundreds of dollars, like $400 or $500 for a proper big mully, like one of these guys that you use in the restaurant. And they're very hard to find, and no one sells them in Norway because no one uses them. It's too labor intensive, and labor is very expensive in Norway. So okay, I'm going to I guess I can take you off now, because I've been on my trusty tripod. So I'm going to edit the video and put that online, and then send it to my mom, and my auntie, because she was curious about the recipe, whether it was better than my grandmother's meatball recipe, and then we'll see how we go. But then I've made Salisbury steak according to the recipe, followed it puncto pricke to the dot, or to the line, apart from quadrupling the amount of sauce. That was different. That's the alarm. Give it a stir to make sure it's not burning on the bottom. There we go. Put it on for another 5 minutes. So, okay, you've seen the basic principle of Salisbury steak. One way of doing it, and if you follow the New York Times recipe, I'm sure you'll be fine. And then the amounts were a little bit off at 800 grams instead of 2 pounds of mince. And then I quadrupled the amount of sauce, and I had quadruple the amount of mushrooms and about the same amount of onions, double the amount of onions. But anyway, cool. There it goes. Looking good.